Story 1. They do not ask for anything, not even comfort. They learned the only way to be loved was to be small and non-demanding. Story 2. I was emotionally abused as a child. This led to low self-esteem and inability to advocate or stand up for myself, assuming everyone dislikes me, severe social anxiety, needing lots of reassurance, and being so observant that other people are shocked by what I pick up on. Story 3. Over-explaining is almost always a trauma response to abuse, because you have experienced people who would physically harm you if your explanation was not thorough enough or did not satisfy them. Story 4. As soon as a car pulls into the driveway, immediately start a frantic cleaning or try to look busy. Not being occupied with something that improves family life was grounds for punishment. Story 5. Running anytime emotions are mentioned. I refuse to cry in front of others. I was so used to my tears leading to bigger problems. I still struggle to express myself even to my therapist. Story 6. Finely tuned empathy. You are constantly trying to gauge everyone's mood to determine if a conflict is imminent. Story 7. Inability to be at ease with other people's emotions. If someone's mood shifts around them, their hypervigilance is triggered, and they often assume they did something wrong. Story 8. Constantly apologizing to my boyfriend for things that do not warrant it. Cringing if he closes the cupboard doors a bit too hard. Story 9. It tends to come in extremes. Never opens up or opens up to near strangers. High emotional control and empathy or little to no emotional control and empathy. Very mature or very immature. Story 10. Constantly apologizing. As an abused child, you learn that your entire existence is a problem, so everything you do requires an apology. I am 31 and still doing it. Story 11. Inability to handle conflict well. Depending on the trauma and the coping mechanisms, individuals might be too angry, too people-pleasing, or too avoidant. However, when people consistently fail at managing conflict, it is usually a bad sign. Story 12:1. Struggling to state your opinion because your input was automatically considered incorrect. How defensive they become over small issues. Double and triple checking instructions. Inability to define specific emotions because you were only allowed to feel what they told you to. Selecting words out of context. Story 13. Not being able to handle other people getting upset. Parents who are emotionally abusive are often emotionally unpredictable. Negative emotions like anger often meant impending abuse. So the child or adult child tries to diffuse situations where people are upset or angry as a method of self-preservation, even though they are no longer in emotional danger. They often use the same strategies they developed with their parents as a child. The problem is that people are entitled to their emotions and should be able to express them in nonviolent ways. When these techniques inevitably fail, the person starts to panic, becoming triggered by others expressing strong, mainly negative emotions, and become so overwhelmed they either go into fight, flight, fawn, or freeze responses. Story 14. Being stone-faced and shy around strangers, but also immediately telling them everything about your life on a too much information level if given a shred of attention. Story 15. Being completely unable to get close friends or partners. After a certain stage, they get blocked out, or I just react with extreme depressive and anxiety episodes. Story 16. Trying to prove your worth, even if you don't have to, even with ridiculously small things. My husband and I have been together for 12 years. On my days off, I still keep a dry erase board and write down everything productive I've done all day. I guess the idea is that he sees I'm worth keeping around. I don't even know at this point. He is amazing and doesn't even look at it, obviously. But trauma affects you for life, you know. Story 17:1. Constantly apologizing for everything, to people or inanimate objects. Overthinking and overanalyzing every little thing. Did I say the wrong thing? Is someone upset with me? Did I do the right thing? I should have done this or that. Feeling shame about everything, even when it is not necessary. Inability to set and maintain healthy boundaries. Story 18. Not sure if it has been said, but assuming no one in the room actually wants you there can come across as being quiet, reserved, a people pleaser, needing to be the funny person, over-explaining yourself, or constantly apologizing. Story 19. Taking a long time to ask someone about something because you are scared of how they will respond. You take multiple steps to mentally prepare yourself to ask them and for how they will respond. It is an instinct, almost seeing a dilemma and needing to talk to someone about it. You find yourself still sitting there, patiently imagining every outcome in your head, practicing how you say it, trying not to psych yourself out, checking to see where the person is, if they are alone or around others. You are aware that there is nothing wrong with the question, and it is likely a 99.9% chance of them responding like an emotionally balanced person. It is the 0.01% chance of them reacting badly that makes you remain sitting for a while. And then when you do ask, it feels like you are watching a wild animal. You do not move, you either keep eye contact or look at an entirely different part of the room, holding your breath. Story 20. Feeling lost in adulthood. Feeling like a perpetual outsider. Not having plans for the future because you never imagined you would make it this far. Story 21. Extended internal conversation. Planning conversations, rehearsing answers and questions, even ordinary ones. Story 22. Coldness and the issues with empathy. You turned off your ability to feel pain, so treating others as you want to be treated can result in being incredibly mean, inconsiderate, and cruel. It wouldn't bother me. Why are you upset? Never taught how or given empathy as a child, making it extremely difficult or impossible to empathize, likely unable to understand the meaning beyond the definition in a book. Taking everything literally because they are always in problem-solving survival mode. Frustrated from constantly feeling misunderstood while being unable to put things into words due to being disconnected from themselves. Story 23. Refusing to accept help from anyone because when they were growing up, help came with strings attached. Story 24. Being afraid to speak up about your interests out of fear that the other person will judge and make fun of those interests because they do not like the same things. My father did this to me since I was 3 years old, and now he wonders why I do not tell him anything. Story 25. Being unable to properly wear headphones, earbuds, or a gaming headset, always off one ear. You need to be able to hear if anyone is coming, if they call your name or say something to you casually, because if they have to repeat themselves, you are in trouble. Story 26. Hypervigilance. I am constantly scanning and reading the room for shifts in tone, cadence, and body language. It is exhausting. Story 27. When someone shows an ounce of care about your well-being or emotions, one of two things happens. Option A. Fast talking because you are so happy someone finally asked how you are, but you have to get it out quickly in case you lose their attention. Option B. Completely shutting down because you are scared it is a trap. Story 28. Distrust. Most things can be boiled down to a complete loss of trust in anything and anyone and a quick reaction to it. Trust is completely stolen from your soul, and other people just seem to believe that fairies and Care Bears are real. Is it a twisted reality? Or is it others? That is the huge problem for me. Story 29. Not trusting people. You never know what words will be used against you, so you guard everything you say. Story 30. Insane levels of social anxiety. I was an only child of divorced parents. My primary parent was not emotionally present, and my weekend parent held me to unachievable standards. My husband and I went out for lunch with his friend and his friend's partner. My husband and his friend went to get beers, so I was alone with his friend's partner. I tried to make it less awkward with small talk, but I literally went beet red, started sweating profusely, and began stuttering. I ended up apologizing profusely for having such severe social anxiety and for being so awkward. She is an angel on earth, so she was very kind and understanding, thankfully. That kind of social situation is genuinely excruciatingly painful without physical pain. I have learned to be upfront with people about the fact that I struggle with social situations, so they do not think I am stuck up or standoffish. My brain has every red alert alarm bell ringing, and it translates to a slightly angry, confused facial expression while I stutter about the weather. Story 31. Always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Never able to fully relax and enjoy anything good that happens because it never lasts. My mother is amazing, but my father ruined everything he could. He still does. Story 32. constantly feeling like an inconvenience, as if your presence, needs, or feelings are a burden. Genuinely believing your needs do not matter or are not worth expressing. Instinctively reading a room or someone's mood within seconds, a skill developed from always needing to stay hypervigilant. Apologizing for everything, even when it is not your fault, and deeply meaning it every time. Struggling to say no and often defaulting to people-pleasing just to feel safe or accepted. Second-guessing yourself constantly and feeling unsure if your thoughts or choices are valid. Neglecting your own self-care, not out of laziness, but because no one ever taught you it was important. Feeling awkward or even anxious when someone compliments you, assuming they are lying, exaggerating, or just feeling sorry for you. Story 33. Stamping down all emotions and insisting that everything is fine, with a cheerful voice and smile, while being very respectful to others. I found as a child that showing emotion got me nowhere, so I said everything was fine to move on. My emotional needs were not going to be met, so I chose not to dwell on them. Being respectful means that if anyone asks what I want, such as where to eat or what movie to watch, I am generally content to let them choose and find something to like in their choice. Voicing my own wants and being rejected is not worth it to me. I have received therapy and am doing much better with this. Story 34. You rock back and forth when seated. Emotionally abused children do this to self-soothe, and it usually carries over into adulthood. Story 35. Taking care of others without really looking out for yourself, trying to fulfill the need to feel useful. Not belonging, not wanted, but useful. People who are extremely quiet or rarely talk. Story 36. Hyperindependency. You have to become everything for yourself when you do not have someone to lean on. Story 37. Having my husband and friends believe me when I say something I saw or feel is important. I saw a large owl swoop down over my car when I was driving home at night. When I told my husband, he was as excited as I was, which felt strange. I half expected him to downplay it or tell me I was mistaken, even though he has never done that. He always instantly believes me when I feel sick or have a headache, even though I can't prove it. After being ignored, belittled, or disbelieved until I got married at 22, I still expect people to make me prove my experiences or feelings. I feel grateful when I am believed, which is a complicated response since I have had a great husband and friends for the past 43 years, but still have moments of doubt when relating my experiences. Our early years indelibly shape our responses to others, and it never fully goes away. Story 38. Tons of plastic surgery and constant nitpicking at the smallest aesthetic details. I work in an industry filled with women who have had every surgery possible, and they are very mean to themselves. Several told me it is because their mothers were very critical, emotionally abusive, and they never felt accepted or good enough. It is sad, and I wish that we could be kinder to each other, especially our children. Story 39. Being the absolutely nicest person until I am not. I go out of my way to create a nice atmosphere and I am super kind to everyone, until someone is extremely unfair. That's when I go into fight or flight and it's a complete switch. I will go to extremes and sharply cut you down or simply cut you off. Also, self-isolating. I protect my peace at all costs and don't have many friends, and very easily distance myself from people. Lastly, memory loss and being scatterbrained. A consequence of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It does leave trauma in the brain. Story 40. Apologizing for everything. Lack of emotional intelligence. Inability to communicate displeasure. Lack of empathy for what others may consider no big deal because of their own trauma. Belief that certain behaviors or ways of communication are normal. Lack of trust in yourself and others. Now, combine emotional abuse with physical and mental abuse. Story 41. Asking if others are okay or if they are upset just because they have not said anything in a little while. Source: personal experience. Story 42. I was at a small gathering, and a woman offered to get me something to eat. I instinctively declined twice, and she laughed gently, saying it was no bother. She brought me some food, and I almost cried. I am a 42-year-old man. Story 43. Always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because good things do not just happen, there is always a price to pay. Therefore, you never truly get to experience joy. Story 44. Peace makes us anxious. Basic human decency in romantic relationships can feel like gold. The combination of these two things can lead to a constant state of whiplash between finally and how do I know? Someone who is never not exhausted. Because even if everything was right in the world, how can you ever let your guard down if you were raised with the understanding that there is no such thing as safe? Story 45. For me, I feel like I am responsible for everything and everyone. I have an overwhelming feeling of obligation to fix or help others, even strangers. Being the oldest sibling, I have been like a mother since grade school, so I find it nearly impossible to shake the caregiver or protector role. I am absolutely terrible at standing up for myself, advocating for myself, or even feeling like I deserve anything for myself. Boundaries are difficult for me. I have also been in a high number of unhealthy relationships because I feel too guilty to leave someone if they say they need me. Plus, I often feel like anything bad that happens to me is my fault. It is painful to recognize all of this awareness and not be able to stop it. I am 42, happily married to a wonderful husband, and mother to 3 amazing adults, yet I still feel like I have to be everything to everyone to have any worth. I am exhausted and worn out, truthfully. Story 46. It is wild how many of us developed hyper-awareness just to avoid upsetting someone, like walking on eggshells became second nature. The over-explaining habit hits hard too because you are always bracing for the moment when your reasons will not be good enough. And yes, the reflex to shrink yourself to avoid being a burden sticks with you much longer than it should. Therapy helped me unlearn some of it, but the echoes are still there sometimes. Story 47. Being always prepared for anything. They always have band-aids, pain medication, spare clothing, water, food, a hair tie, nail file, and a power bank. Story 48. I give up immediately. When there is a meeting about a problem, even when I know who they are really addressing, I still think it's me. My wife has to work now, but for more than 20 years she worked part-time while I kept house. When the kids came along, I took care of getting them after school since I got to work around 6 a.m. I handled homework, showers, dinner, and laundry. The kids are older now. When my wife bullies me, I just let her. My only boundary is that she can get me to say whatever she wants, but I will never believe it and will not discuss it with her. I give up. I am mildly disabled. Walking is very tough, so I read and write. She gets the trophy. Story 49. Over-apologizing because you were always expected to attend to others' emotions, but your own were not considered important. Story 50. Shutting down whenever someone expresses emotion. Dismissing everyone else's emotions. Excessive work behavior. Story 51. Apparently accepting difficult situations and your place in the world or somebody's life for what they are instead of getting upset about them. My partner and our therapist seemed mildly horrified by it, but I kind of struggle to understand why. It makes no difference how upset I am about something regardless of how unfair it may seem. Story 52. Only recently in therapy did I realize I was severely emotionally abused until my mother passed in 2020. I am in my mid-30s now. Everyone's examples feel like a personal attack on me, but it's really like, oh yes, this is me. I am also a nonprofit lawyer, which is an inherently adversarial process. I also hate conflict but am forcing myself into it because I guess I cannot stop the party. Story 53. Codependency can also manifest as extreme people-pleasing. If you are upset, then I will be upset because your problems become my problems. You need to get something done, but it is easier if I do it, so I will do it for you. If you are not happy with the things I do for you, I will bend over backwards to do whatever you want. Story 54. I feel like a psychic in the way I can read people, picking up on their patterns and predicting their behaviors. It is like I am ruining the ending for everyone I know for myself. I cannot stop giving myself spoilers. Story 55. I was emotionally and mentally abused and neglected by my parents. They did not let me be who I am. I let people emotionally and mentally use me. I do not let myself be who I am. I protect others before I protect myself. This year I started to undo this. It has been horrible. Story 56. Not believing compliments or being able to accept them. Striving for perfection but never seeing anything they do as good enough. Refusing to ask for help. Seeing it as weakness. Seeing crying as weakness. Punishing themselves when anything goes wrong between them and someone else, even if they were not at fault. Story 57. I was neglected emotionally. I do not call it abuse, but my parents did not know how to attend to my emotions as a child. Story 58. I was always in denial about being emotionally abused because my parents always tried to have the best intentions and were not obviously or directly abusive. However, they handled my emotions very poorly in my opinion. This thread definitely makes me think it was abuse, whether or not it was intended to be. Story 59. Children who are mature for their age often act like little adults. It is as if they were never given any space to explore age-appropriate behaviors and had excessively high expectations placed on them. Story 60. Detaching from your surroundings. Usually, in very stressful situations, you go into fight or flight. But if you grow up in an abusive house, the only way through is detaching from your senses. Story 61. Overly apologizing, clinging to anyone who gives you positive attention, even when they may not be so great, and overreacting to small mistakes are all pretty common, I feel. Story 62. Struggling to develop any kind of social relationship because you did not have a healthy standard or an example of how a relationship should be. Therapy helps a lot. Story 63. Me to my therapist. One thing is that they seek constant validation. It may be voiced, or they may observe the reactions of others to see if their feelings and reactions are valid. I have to ask my therapist if my feelings are okay or if I should reconsider something, and he either validates me or helps me if I am overreacting. Their emotions are usually either completely muted or expressed in outbursts. This is either because of what they have experienced or because it is how they survived, and they need to relearn emotional regulation. They may say sorry even if they have done nothing wrong, just in case, and to check if they did something wrong so they do not repeat it. Or because they expect you to be angry or upset and are trying to prevent it. They try to keep other people's emotions pleasant because otherwise emotions are scary. There is a lot more, but that is what is on my mind. Story 64. Thinking everyone is mad at you because you grew up with an unpredictable parent, guardian, or romantic partner. Story 65. I just want to say that it is really frustrating how many of the things people are describing in this thread I have or do and have spent most of my life being proud of. I am self-sufficient, high-functioning in a crisis, very empathetic, observant of other people's moods and emotions, and tend to avoid conflict. I have always thought of these as positive skills, many I learned from my mom. So it was really frustrating when I finally started therapy and my therapist began talking about trauma responses and emotional abuse. The few things I like about myself are actually symptoms, not skills. Story 66. The way one opens and closes doors. Turn the knob, open, step through quietly. Turn the other side of the knob, close, and slowly release. We do not want to draw attention to ourselves or disturb anyone. Most people often just push the door closed, making noise. Story 67. One more I just remembered. Maladaptive daydreaming. I have spent my whole life imagining that I was a completely different person, making up scenarios and lying in bed for months, living in my head as someone else. Only attention deficit hyperactivity disorder medications finally fixed it, and for the past 1.5 years, I have actually been able to live my own life. Story 68. In my case, I am a loner. People I care for do not get to know that I help. There are times I would love to have a warm friend, but I know better. Story 69. Being immediately defensive upon any criticism, whether constructive or not. My father is still trying to unlearn this in therapy. Story 70. Being able to tell what mood someone is in by their footsteps and body language. Looking for subtle shifts in body language and analyzing them carefully. Story 71. I can't keep scrolling through the responses. Forget all of you for identifying 99% of my issues. I don't want to be crying into my wine while at home alone on a Friday night. I don't go out anymore because it is safer to be at home alone with my dogs. And now you have ruined it. Story 72. I notice every shift in tone, Every pause, every difference. It is always worst-case scenario thinking. Story 73. Well, in therapy today, I learned that feeling like any romantic partner has to anticipate my needs and feelings because I do it for them is a trauma response from being emotionally neglected. Story 74. Eating to excess even if you do not want it or are not hungry. The plate must be cleaned, even when you are alone or in a restaurant paying for it yourself. Must you always be so wasteful and unappreciative of the food someone put in front of you? Story 75. Does being bullied as a kid count? My parents are amazing, but I was treated horribly at school until junior year. Reading this thread, I realized I do a lot of what is stated here. Story 76. I was driving with a coworker in my car, and I hit a speed bump a little too fast. When the car bounced, she yelled, "I'm sorry." She had grown up in a terribly abusive home. Story 77. I get uncomfortable if my partner is doing a task and I am not doing anything. I may do 90% of the housework, but the moment he goes to take out the trash or put dishes into the dishwasher, I hop to attention and either tell him he does not have to do that or find something else to do at the same time. Story 78. Oh, won't this be a list? I'll just say, when people apologize for things they haven't done or don't need an apology. When they unconditionally, without doubt, help someone in need and think they have to do it. This is the good side, but called savior syndrome. Or when they disregard someone's need for help with the idea that their own need is greater. This is the bad side, in my opinion, although more common. Inability to form meaningful relationships without the idea of it being a give and take, hence feeling a lack of self-worth in a situation where the other party actually likes them. To name a few. Story 79. Not being able to have boundaries. Not being able to accept help. Anticipating why people are mad at you even when they have not communicated that they are mad. Story 80. Being too much of a people pleaser, overly helpful or apologetic, and worried about disappointing others. Story 81. Scrolled a while but never saw perfectionism. It can arise from a chronic distorted belief that one is never enough or good enough to receive desperately needed and developmentally required care and attention. Story 82. Hypervigilance and catastrophizing interpretation of other people's emotions. The slightest shift in demeanor or mood sets off alarm bells that the person is angry with you. Story 83. Picking up on the hidden meanings people have when they talk. Sometimes there are none, but you pick up on them anyway. Or did they? No. Maybe. Yes, definitely. Wait, no. Also, overthinking everything. Story 84. Hyperindependence, but I am currently experiencing one step further. When I ask for help, I feel like I am going to explode if I do not receive it. I am finally asking for help, reaching out once, and I wonder what it means that I am not receiving it immediately. This leads to the feeling that my hyperindependence is justified, as if it proves I cannot rely on anybody. Anyway, I am starting therapy again soon. I am talking to a new therapist next week. Story 85. The constant need to apologize. Not asking for help. Not saying no to most things you do not want to agree to. Only relying on yourself. Only trusting yourself. Severe social anxiety. Appearing small so you are not noticed. Speaking quietly for a broad range of people. And much more. There are many indicators people miss that are right in front of us. Story 86. Pushing people away even though you love them. Also, asking for anyone's help feels like metaphorically groveling on the floor in front of them. I would rather die. Story 87. Being overly observant of people's tone and assuming they are mad at you if it is slightly off. Also assuming everyone hates you. Story 88. Sadly, emotionally abusing your child is common. Many abusive parents were abused themselves and do not know any other style of parenting. Story 89. Being an intensely protective parent and viewing things as attempted kidnappings when they are not. Reflect on those. Oh my God. Kidnappers are at Target Facebook posts. The man walked down two of the same aisles we walked down. Story 90. Reading this thread has made me realize many of my traits stem from the abuse I experienced. I have more comments to read and further self-realizations to explore. Story 91. shrinking inside yourself as much as possible, apologizing for the smallest inconveniences, never showing emotion and always being a good soldier because it will be used against you anyway, and emotions are weak. Story 92. Dislike being touched or hugged by friends. Startle easily when someone approaches me from behind and touches me. Always on high alert, vigilant for the next bad thing to happen. Not good at small talk or starting a casual conversation. Story 93. Being promiscuous. Children who are sexualized or molested by a family member, especially a close family member, are taught that sexual exploitation is the same thing as love. Story 94. People pleasing. Procrastination and rewriting emails and text messages thousands of times so they do not sound rude, pushy, happy, unthoughtful, eager, reluctant, angry, sad, or mean. Story 95. Always be cautious. Problems can arise at any time and in any way, without warning. Suppressing your feelings to the point where they are hidden even from yourself. Story 96. Being incredibly sensitive to the moods of those around you. Becoming very anxious if anyone else seems upset or quiet. Trying to fix everyone else's moods. Story 97. Always questioning why someone is being kind to you. Are they simply being kind? Or are they trying to manipulate you? Story 98. When someone unexpectedly says, "Can I talk to you?" Immediate dread follows, wondering what you have done wrong. Story 99. Inability to panic at actual catastrophic events, but high anxiety over mundane events. For example, a family member pulling into my driveway would cause me severe anxiety. However, a house burning down or being hit by a tornado elicits indifference. I was 16 when the house almost burned down. I was home alone with my brother and knew I was going to get in trouble for this. It was not my fault, but I was completely blamed. I should have lost it as a 16-year-old girl who had just lost everything she owned. Clothes, books, fish tanks, posters, souvenirs, and more. However, I had no emotions. Story 100. Sometimes people end up in unhealthy friendships or romantic relationships because the other person was kinder to them than their own family. Story 101. Writing a whole post and then deleting it because it does not matter and the feeling that no one will see it or listen anyway. Wanting to participate but not doing so because of the fear of being ignored or rejected. Sorry, it took 3 attempts to write this post. Story 102. Being highly sensitive and affected by others' emotions, often labeled as very perceptive or empathetic as a child. Ignoring your own wants and needs for the sake of others most of the time. Difficulty identifying your own personal emotions. Being very complimentary or fawning over people while ignoring bad behavior or warning signs. Needing dark, quiet places to decompress, such as closets or under desks. Ability to stay calm during tense situations but becoming overwhelmed by small things. Story 103. A lot of these rang so near my heart. I never truly accepted it, but now I know. I was so emotionally abused as a child. Thank you, Mom. Story 104. Getting triggered by loud noises. When I was living with my ex, we had a house. Sometimes people would curse at themselves because they couldn't find something or murmur in an angry voice because something went wrong. Even when he was on the first floor and I was asleep on the second, it triggered me so much that it woke me up because I was afraid I had done something to make him angry at me. The same happens with my boyfriend now. He is working in his workroom, and when something isn't working out, he gets angry at the object and curses or murmurs at himself or the object. I sit in the living room almost freaking out, fearing I did something to make him angry. This is irrational because my brain knows it has nothing to do with me, but the instinct still kicks in. Story 105. After personally experiencing this as a child, I have no self-confidence to speak of and spend all my time in public trying to make myself as small and invisible as possible. I over-apologize for everything and, in the past, have let people walk all over me. I find it hard to trust people and always feel like I am not worthy of love. That is the main issue that has affected me. Story 106. Over-explaining the smallest things, such as why you were unable to answer the phone when someone called. Also, not realizing that simply not wanting to do something someone else requests is a sufficient reason to decline. Instead, you may create excuses that seem appropriate to the other person, believing your feelings are irrelevant or insufficient from the start. Story 107. Feeling like setting boundaries is an act of betrayal, like silence is not safe. Also, hypervigilance, dark humor, needing external validation to feel like emotions are real or that I am real, constantly people-pleasing and trying to prove I deserve to exist. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.